Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome an accomplished and a former Disney leader with an expertise in customer service and retention from Maryland, USA, Mr. Vance Morris. Vance, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I look forward to it.
Thank you. Vance is a customer retention strategist. He's a former Disney leader and an entrepreneur. He's an author of several books. Some of them are Systematic Magic, Seven Magic Ways, Magic Keys to Disneyfy Your Business, Tales from the Customer Service Script, and The Wealthy Cleaner Blueprint. So, Vance, before we talk customer experience and retention, your journey from a birth control security guard to a Disney leader and a successful entrepreneur is fascinating. Tell me about your journey and what kept you going in those early transitions.
Sure. The birth control factory security guard was a college job. So I add that to the mix just to stand out a little bit amongst the crowd.
Yes.
I think we all need to do that sometimes.
Absolutely. Yes.
But I started my career at Disney. I spent a little over a decade there. I enjoyed my time. I learned, really, the first thing I learned there was all about systems and processes, not so much customer experience or wows or picking up little pieces of trash that Disney is known for, but really that Disney runs on systems.
Correct.
And I carried that through my entire career. After about 10 years, I left Disney. It was long enough for me. Some of my friends are still there 40 years later, but that was long enough for me.
Yeah.
And I had a couple other corporate jobs and found I make a lousy employee. I just don't like to be told what to do. So I went out on my own. And so here in Maryland, I own 3 home service businesses. So bricks and mortar, we go out and we serve customers and things like that. And because I put systems in place there, those systems gave me freedom to go out and be able to coach and consult with other businesses. And so taking those systems that I learned in Disney 30 years ago, putting them in place in my small businesses here in Maryland, literally gave me freedom to not walk away, but step away, allow them to run on autopilot, have a general manager, he runs them, and I meet with him 90 minutes a week. And that's all the time I spend on those 3 businesses, 90 minutes a week.
Incredible. Incredible. I wish more people could learn how you manage 3 businesses in 90 minutes a week. But tell me, Vance, when you were at Disney, what was the most transformational lesson you learned from the 10 years you spent there?
Certainly. Well, I think one of them, you hear the quote, the guest is always right. And we take that to a certain extent, but we always say the guest is always the guest, or the customer is always the customer. And one of the things that I learned is that once a guest brings a problem to you, you own it.
Right.
And a lot of the times, it wasn't even your fault or Disney's fault that there was a problem. So we would, guests would come in and check into the hotel and they were cranky because the flight was late or the airline lost their luggage, and they were visibly upset. And I was like, well, that's not really Disney's fault, but they're upset. So now it's our problem. So we would take the time to, okay, well, we really feel bad about that. Why don't we? We'll call over to the lounge bar and say, look, why don't we? We'll bring over a little glass of champagne. Why don't you have that while you're checking in? And I notice you have a couple of kids. We have this thing called a fast pass. We'll give you a couple of fast passes. So when you go in your park on the first day, you don't even have to wait in line for your favorite ride. Here are a couple of fast passes. And you can just see the stress melting away.
Amazing.
Mom and Dad are enjoying a little glass of champagne, and all that. It just melts away. And so really just looking at the problems from a different point of view and realizing that well, one, I mean, unhappy people don't have fun.
Correct.
And if you're not having fun and if you're not happy, you're not going to spend money.
Yes.
And if you're not having fun and you're not spending money, you're not going to have good memories.
Mm,
And if you don't have good memories, you're probably not coming back.
correct.
So this is all a customer retention strategy. And
Mm,
this is how Disney gets people to come back again and again and again, is
mm,
because they are making people happy. They have fantastic memories
mm.
and they do want to come back.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing this incredible experience that you had with Disney. One more question relating to Disney, and then we move on to customer experience. You took a decision to teach others how to Disneyfy their business. Can you share with us your first success story that validated this idea?
Sure. I worked with a oil change company. So
Mhm.
here in the States, we have those like Quick Lube, Jiffy Lube kind
Yeah.
of places.
Mm,
And my client, he was an independent. And so his competitors were these big national chains. And he was getting coupon clipped to death. I mean,
mm,
every time they ran a special, he felt he had to run one. And it
mm,
was just a race to the bottom on pricing. And I don't even remember how we got connected, but I said, well, look, there is no competitive advantage to being second cheapest. You just can't say, oh, yeah, we're second cheapest, come see us, because people are just going to go find the cheapest.
mm,
I said, well, let's go the other direction.
mm.
Disney is the most expensive
Correct.
of the theme parks out there. They are not shy about that, but they also deliver the experience. So I
Mm,
said, well, let's do that with you. And he said,
mm,
well, okay, I don't have anything to lose because
mm,
the going this way is killing me. So let's go the
mm,
other way.
mm,
So what we do is we look at the customer journey and we find different points on the customer journey in which to create an experience.
mhm.
I'll give you the highlights. We did a lot of different things, but so when the customer now arrives at his place, we designed it like a 1950 style service station.
Mhm.
So he has a whole bunch of guys dressed in white shirts and bow ties come
Mm.
running out with little gloves on. They open the door. One guy comes out and he squeegees the windshield. Another guy's checking the air pressure in the tire. They escort the guest into the waiting room, and there's not, 2-month-old or 2-year-old magazines. There's, current issues of things and books. And then there is a barista in there
Wow.
who's
Mm.
making your favorite coffee drink for you,
Mm.
not 3-day-old stale coffee.
Mm.
And the interesting thing is that it was one of the oil technicians who was the barista. So
Wow.
that he had like 11 employees and they all rotated
Mm.
on making the coffee drinks for that day.
Mm.
And it
Mm.
was included in the cost of the oil change. So
Mm.
they weren't paying extra. And people started talking about this.
Mm.
Now, he did, like I said, did a couple of other things, but he was able to raise his prices. He's about 60% higher than all of the other oil
Amazing.
changes in town.
Mm.
And yes, he lost a few customers, but the level of customer that he has now is
Mm.
a heck of a lot better. They appreciate the experience, they appreciate
Right.
that level of service.
What an amazing
His
story. Yeah.
employee retention went through the roof.
Mm.
Less wear and tear on his building, less wear and tear on his employees, and he's extremely profitable.
Mm.
So I knew that if we implemented these Disney style experiences in an oil change company
Yeah.
and it worked, it
Yeah.
was proof of concept.
Absolutely. What a fantastic story. Thank you. Uh, Vance, you also emphasize that it's not about adopting business strategies, but adapting them. Can you elaborate this and give me an example?
Sure. So, I talk a lot about, excuse me, different companies that would look like certainly like Disney, Zappos, Ritz-Carlton, even Chick-fil-A
Yeah.
here in the States, all service powerhouses.
Hmm.
And unless you own a castle or a theme park, you don't want to copy what they do
Hmm.
because that just wouldn't make sense.
Right.
but you do want to adapt their model to whatever it is you're doing, whether you're a
Mm,
dentist or
mm,
a carpet cleaner or whatever, is
mm,
how do you adapt what they're doing? And I always look to outside of my industry
mm,
for the best ideas.
mm,
And I tell the story, and I don't know whether this is true or not, but I heard this somewhere that, drive-throughs for fast food dates back to like the 1950s, and there
mhm,
was a McDonald's executive sitting
mm,
in a bank line waiting to make a deposit, and he
mhm.
was looking at those tubes, where the deposit goes whoosh up over the
Yeah.
from the car, and he's probably thinking, how do I get a milkshake into that thing?
Mm,
So the restaurant industry looked to the banking industry to figure out how to do takeout from a window.
wow.
Um, so
Wow.
looking outside of your industry
Mm,
on how to, you know, get another idea, to
mm.
adapt an idea from one industry into another.
Fascinating. You also talk about creating walk on burning coals client loyalty. What are the ingredients for this kind of devotion?
Certainly. Well, first and foremost, you've got to be able to deliver the goods.
Yeah.
So you have to be great at whatever it is your service or product is. And that's really entry into the marketplace.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're not good at what you do,
Mm.
you,
Don't do
you,
it.
it,
Mm.
everything else doesn't matter.
Correct.
Um, but you have to, at each point on the customer journey, you have to have this experience or this wow moment.
Mm.
So whether it's interaction on your website, whether it's a handwritten thank you note at the end of the experience,
Mm.
or anything in between. And then you also have to create what I call our emotional connections
Mhm.
with your customers.
Mm.
And as a small business, you have that opportunity because we're not Goodyear, we're not Walmart, we're not Coca-Cola,
Yeah.
we're small business owners. And I'll give you a quick example. I shamelessly use my children in my marketing,
Mhm.
and I send a monthly newsletter to
Mm.
all of my clients.
Mm.
And I will use pictures of my daughter. Well, she's older now, but she used to do ballet.
Mm.
And I would take a picture of her in her little tutu. And when she was 5 and 6 years old, and my customers watched her grow up in her
Mm.
ballet outfit. And we were at the grocery store one day, and this woman runs up to us and says, "Oh my God, Emma, how was your recital?"
Mm.
And we're
Wow.
like, we were ready to run and hide in the frozen
Mm.
food section,
Mm.
but then I had to think, oh, she's got to be one of my customers.
Mm.
I've created an emotional connection with this
Correct.
person.
Yeah.
She's never leaving my company.
Mm.
She's staying with, and there's thousands of people just like her
Yeah.
that I have served that have watched my kids grow up. Now, you don't have to use your kids. I mean,
Correct.
maybe you're a fisherman, or maybe you like knitting or something,
Mm.
but whatever you can figure out to create emotional connections with your customers,
Mm.
that's the stickiness. That's what's
Yeah.
going to keep them coming back.
Mm.
And that's what's going to have them singing your praises,
Mm.
which is also word of mouth marketing and referrals.
Absolutely. Well said. And Vance, how does Disney's Everything Speaks philosophy influence how businesses should design their environments and processes?
Well, everything speaks is paying attention to details.
Mm.
And every detail in your business
Mm.
either enhances or detracts from the experience. There
Mm.
is no middle ground.
Mm.
So if you have a dusty house plant in your waiting room, that is detracting from the experience.
Mm.
If your front desk person is grumpy, that's detracting from the experience.
Mm.
So you have to look at everything. I mean, if you're a cleaning company and you're driving around in a van that looks like it hasn't been washed in a week,
Mm.
well,
Yeah.
that's not congruent with who you are, and
Mm.
that's detracting from the experience. So
Mm.
you have to look at every detail in your business
Mm.
and say to yourself or ask yourself, is this enhancing what we do? So, I mean, at
Right.
Disney, there are things, there are posts and fences inside the Magic Kingdom that they paint every night of the week. and
mm,
they know at what time to paint it based on temperature and humidity and the
mm,
weather so
mm.
that it's dry for the first guest the next morning.
Wow.
That is a fanatical attention to detail
Correct. Correct.
that we need to look at. And
Mm,
what are the most important details in your business? How much
mm,
more would you be willing to spend on one detail if you knew that it was going to have a return on keeping people and having an ROI and having people return to you?
wow. And what are the seven magic keys from your book, Systematic Magic, that businesses can use to create extraordinary customer experiences?
Sure. Well, that's a loaded question. I don't know if we have time for all seven, but
But we'll find time.
we certainly, there's one magic key is creating an environment,
Mm,
and that is an environment for service and an environment for sales.
mm,
So you have to, if you are, if you have a storefront, is your store designed for service or is it
mm,
just kind of willy-nilly and hodgepodge? If
mm,
you have to go into a person's home to do sales,
mhm,
to me, that's a hostile sales environment because you're in
mm.
somebody else's kitchen. So, what do you do to take over a part of that kitchen so that you can at least get a little bit on equal ground
Mm.
and be able to have a equal sales environment for
Yeah,
yourself?
yeah.
Um, there's definitely employee magic. And really, that comes if you have employees. What I say about that is that if the employees are not having a good experience or a
Mhm,
great experience, there's no way they can deliver a
mm,
great experience for your customers. So you
mm,
really have to start there. I'm not saying you have to coddle them or, give them everything they want,
mm.
but they need to feel seen and they need to feel and they need to be engaged with your
Correct,
company.
correct.
Um, Certainly, attention to detail is one of the magic keys, and we've already touched on that.
Mm,
The wow factor,
mm,
again, looking at each point on the customer journey and
mhm.
figuring out, and that's all Disney has done,
Yeah.
is they've just figured out what are those boring, mundane things that every customer or every company has to do. And they
Mm,
just figured out a way to make an experience out of it.
yeah.
Answering the telephone, they've
Mm,
figured out a way. Greeting a guest, they figured out a way to make an experience out of it.
mm,
Um, Certainly having standards,
mm.
service standards, company standards, employee standards
Yeah.
are vital so that it keeps you on track.
Right.
Um, and so when you put all of the magic keys together,
Mm,
you can't help but to have a profitable future.
mm,
They all work together as one.
Well said. And what would you say is the role of storytelling when you talk of creating memorable customer interactions? And how can smaller businesses apply this?
Sure. We are an entertainment society.
Yeah.
Um, with that, and just look at the news any given day.
Mm,
We're always talking about movie stars and
mm,
actresses. Most of the other news is forgotten. And look at what we pay movie
mm,
stars. I mean,
mm,
bajillions and bajillions of dollars, and school teachers are paid
mm,
whatever they're paid.
mm,
Um, and so we have this huge emphasis on entertainment.
mm,
And if all we talk about is our service, our product, our widget, people tune out. They
mm,
don't want to hear about your new, if I only in my carpet business, if all I talked about was the equipment or if I got a new
mm,
Suck-O-Matic 3000 that could suck the dirt out of they don't care.
mm.
They just want to know that I can clean the carpet.
Yes.
But if I tell a story
Mm,
about, hey, we were at Mrs. So-and-so's house. She was really had these terrible allergies, had difficulty breathing in her own home. And
mm,
we were able to go in and do this cleaning and apply this treatment. And now she's, able to be in her own home and et cetera, and tell a story.
mm,
People resonate with those stories.
mm,
They see themselves in the stories. So
mm.
if you can tell a story, you're going to have a much better connection. And again, going back to emotional connections,
Yeah.
you're going to have a much better connection with people, and a better opportunity to sell your service or product by doing so.
Fascinating. Vance, how can a business turn clients into their marketing force, just like Disney fans rave about the Disney brand?
Well, I certainly by one is you need to be tellable.
Mm,
And what I teach my clients and my coaching members is at the end of any interaction with you,
mm,
you want people going and saying, "Oh my God, you'll
mm,
never guess what happened at," and
mm.
insert your profession here.
Right.
So if you take my oil change fellow,
Sorry, yeah.
I would guess you've never gone home, sat down with the family, and said, "Oh my God, you'll never guess what happened at the oil change today."
Mm,
That
mm,
conversation just does not happen
mm,
unless you've gone to my guy over in Ohio and you'll
mm,
say, "Oh my God, you'll never guess what happened. I
mm,
walked in and these guys opened my door for me and they were careful and I got my favorite coffee drink and I read today's newspaper." I mean, it was a real, so you have to be tellable.
mm,
You
mm,
have to have something that stands out that what makes people want to talk about you. So if you're just
mm,
ho hum and if you're a plumber and you walk in and you
mm.
fix the problem and you walk out, it's there's nothing there. I
Sure.
mean, yes, you did your job, you did a good job, but remember, it is not the customer's job to remember you. It's your job to remind the customer that you
Mm,
exist. And
mm,
in order to do that, you need to stand out. You need to be different. And in a marketplace that is highly commoditized, and it doesn't matter what industry you're in, they're all
mm. Yeah.
commoditized.
Yeah.
You've got to do something to stand out.
Mm.
And doing just a good job is not enough.
Correct. Correct.
So being tellable is what is going to get you out there into the marketplace and have people talking about you like, "Oh my
So,
God, you'll never guess what happened."
amazing. Amazing. And is there a way to ascertain the financial cost of not having a proper service recovery system in place?
Oh, yeah. I mean, getting a new customer is very expensive.
Hmm.
It's one of the most expensive things a business will do.
Correct.
So, for example, in my carpet cleaning business, it cost me $130 to get a new customer in the front door. So that's advertising, cost for my guy to answer the phone,
Hmm.
etc., and
Hmm.
getting a new customer in. Um, if and you have to look at the lifetime value of a customer.
Hmm.
So for me, it's about 10 years before they either move or maybe they die or
Hmm.
what have you.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so average customer for me is worth about $6,000.
Hmm.
So if I make a mistake with somebody, I don't just lose the $130 it cost me to get them
Hmm.
or the $400 that they pay me to clean that one time.
Hmm.
I'm losing $6,000
Correct.
of the lifetime of what I
Hmm.
could be making from them.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that is what you have to look at. And so I will do everything I can to fix that
Hmm.
in order to save the 6,000 because that's a lot more incentive
Hmm.
than 400.
Yeah.
And what I also tell people is anticipate fixing the problem before it becomes a problem. So,
Hmm.
for example, if one of my technicians is running late and they know they're going to be late,
Hmm.
one, we call our office and we say, "Hey, we're running behind. Can you please call my next job and let them know?"
Hmm.
And so we do that. The technician then, on his way to his next job, stops at a grocery store and buys flowers for the
Hmm.
next job
Hmm.
and arrives at the next job with flowers in hand,
Hmm.
saying, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry I'm late. Here's
Hmm.
some flowers." Now,
Wow.
who is going to yell at a 23-year-old guy with a bouquet of flowers standing on your front? You just can't yell at the guy. You feel, like you can't yell at him.
Yeah.
And of course, we'll do, some kind of discount or something to
Yeah.
make up for it. Um, But if you know there's a problem and you can anticipate fixing it before it gets even bigger,
Mm.
yeah, you've got it because you got to know. I mean, nobody thinks about lifetime value of a customer.
Yeah.
They just think of, okay, what's it costing me right now?
Mm. I know. I'm just going to say that, I mean, the way you have actually got all this data which helps you drive your decision isn't, I don't think too many business people actually have this data. Cost, the employee cost, acquisition cost, and lifetime value. Fantastic. Thank you. I have time for one more question for you, Vance.
Sure.
What is the secret to hiring and retaining engaged employees who care about customer experience?
It is hiring employees with a heart for service.
Hmm.
I can train you to do anything
Hmm.
as it amounts to the job. I can teach you to carry a tray in a restaurant. I can teach you to clean a carpet. I can teach you to take a hammer and bang on a nail. I can't teach you to be nice.
Hmm.
And so in an interview, my questions are just tell me about your family. Tell me about your grandma. Tell me about a time you went to a restaurant and had bad service. How
Hmm.
did that make you feel? Tell me about a time you went to a restaurant and had great service. How did that make you feel?
Hmm.
And it's very rarely do I ask a question about how do you do what it is
Hmm.
you do.
Yeah.
Tell me about the last time you were late for work.
Hmm.
What happened? Why were you late? How did you feel about being late? And so those are the questions I ask pre-employment,
Hmm.
really to see what kind of
Yeah.
person this is. And
Yeah.
then I'll ask them really weird questions like,
Hmm.
how many traffic lights are in your hometown?
Hmm.
And see what their reaction is. Because some people look at me like, what are you, an idiot? Who asked this question?
Yeah.
And then there are some people that'll really think they're analytical, and you can see them counting the traffic lights as they're driving through.
Hmm.
And then some will just pull a number out and say
Hmm.
it.
Hmm.
The engagement part, though, this is once they are an employee,
Hmm.
if they're good and you want them to stick around,
Hmm.
they do need to be engaged.
Hmm.
And in order for them to be engaged, you have to ask them their opinion and be ready to react
Hmm.
to that opinion.
Yeah.
And many of the best ideas for operations at Disney and in my own companies
Hmm.
have come from the employees.
Right.
I mean, they do the job day in and day out. Now,
Hmm.
granted, we give them parameters,
Yeah.
but within those parameters, hey, how do we do this better?
Hmm.
Walt Disney called it plussing.
Hmm.
That's his process improvement.
Hmm.
And going to the people that do the job every day, hey, how do we make this job easier for you? How do we
Hmm.
make cleaning better for the customer? What can we do?
Hmm.
And they'll be like, oh, well, if we had a way to, instead of making 3 trips to the van, if we could just make 2, okay, great. How do we do that? And
Hmm.
now they're like, oh, wait, the boss listened to me?
Hmm.
And oh, wait, the boss actually did what I asked.
Yeah.
So that's how you
That
get
makes a
the
difference.
engagement.
Hmm.
And I've found that once you have engagement, people tend to not leave. And I
Hmm.
think that's one of the reasons Disney has people staying there 30, 40, 50
Right.
years is that the employees there are engaged. Well, granted, it's also Disney, but
Hmm.
they are engaged employees.
Hmm. Wow. On that note, Vance, I just want to say what an incredible conversation this has been for me and my viewers and listeners. You know, I have always known Disney for its service. Every time I have visited one of the parks, it's been incredible. I've also read a lot about customer experience and how important and how large it's likely to be. People estimate it could be a $1 trillion business in the next few years around the world. But the way you explain not just the philosophies of Disney, the way it has been put into practice in Disney, the way you have thought it through for your clients, for your own business. And I think that the icing on the cake, so to speak, was your thoughts on hiring engaged employees. Thank you so much for speaking to me and good luck to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.